So the Chaikin volatility here, we're looking at the slope. So the Chaikin needs to be either rising for a long or falling for a short. We're looking at the Bollinger Band to be expanding. All right, so the Bollinger needs to be expanding for a long or a short. And the EMA 50, so here's the EMA 50, other red line. The EMA 50 needs to be rolling over. So it wants to use the change in slope, which the default settings for the change in slope is to identify when an indicator looks like it's starting to roll over. Let's see if I missed anything. Nope, that's it. Just those three components. Okay, so let's start building. All right, we'll do the simple ones first here. So the Chaikin volatility here, right? The slope, rising or falling. So let's grab a slope solver. Connect that in. All right, pretty straightforward. And being on Renko bars, obviously it's causing the indicator to rise and fall pretty extreme there. All right, so that's one down. Next one, let's do the Bollinger expanding and contracting. So, all right, so go to our solvers, grab the expansion contraction right there in the middle. And all right, so let's switch our indicator over. There we go. And let's see, we're using a 2 and 50 period. Okay. All right, yep, so we'll select the upper band first. And then for input B, that will also be the Bollinger. And adjust the period to 50. And this time we're going to select the lower band. And let's see here. All right, next let's go into the expansion contraction rules. And normally, I think normally you're probably going to want both of the, I don't want to say settings, both of the conditions to be the same here. Right, so if you're looking for expansion, then set both of them to expansion. Right. If you're looking for contraction, then you're probably going to want to set both of these to contraction. So if we hit apply, right, there we go. So whenever the Bollinger is expanding, right, we get a long and a short output. And whenever it's contracting, there's no output, so that means no signal can occur when the Bollinger is contracting. So, all right, so there's the second component, and the last one here is the EMA 50 using the change in slope. There you go, change in slope. All right, so for the input, let's switch this over to the EMA 50 period. There we go. All right. And so looking at this one, let me find a good example. Actually, you know what? Yeah, sorry. I do stand corrected here on what I said earlier. Sorry about that. Actually, yeah, let me take a sec here. I'll be right back. I need to go, grab some water here. And we're going to talk about the change in slope when I get back. Yeah, we're going to focus on the red line right here in this area and discuss what is the change in slope doing here, right? You can see the output here is a fuzzy logic type of output here. All right, so yeah, give me a second here to get a glass of water. All right, I'm back. So let's see here. So what the change in slope is trying to do, well, actually what it is doing is it's looking at when an indicator is beginning to turn directions. So let's see, I'm really going to have to stretch this out. There we go. Right. So looking at the EMA here, right, we can see it's slowly kind of flattening out, right? And it might be, looks like it might be preparing to roll up. And so as the downward slope begins to flatten out, and possibly, reverse up, right? The output here also, so for the long output, so if this moving average is indeed going to reverse up, right, we can see the output is slowly increasing here, right? And it actually does reverse up here, right? So it dives down, for a couple more. We got a couple of down bars here, right? So it dives back down here, and then the EMA flattens out and eventually does roll up there. And we can see, right, the long output increases here, and the short output decreases here, right? As the downward slope flattens out, right, the short output decreases as the long output increases there, right? So, so Manny didn't specifically explain how he's using the change in slope. So, the way its default setting here, really all the change in slope is doing is, since we're not building a fuzzy logic system, it's really just telling us, is the indicator sloping up or is it sloping down, right? However, when it does begin to kind of roll over, right, we can see that there's no signals here, right? So in other words, when we combine this with the other conditions, with the other indicators here, right, we can see that we won't be able to get a signal when the EMA begins to flatten out, essentially. And let's kind of look back here. And let's see if I can find, there we go. All right, so we're in an uptrend here. Yeah, and we can see as the EMA begins to flatten out, right, because obviously, the Renko bars are doing a pullback, then there's no signal possible as that happens there. So, and okay, great. Yeah, so Manny's confirming. Yeah, he's just using the default change in slope there. Yeah. So this right here is really, this is the difference between using a slope solver, right? We do actually have, we just use the menu here, right? So we actually have a slope solver versus the change in slope, right? So the slope solver, it's going to give us a long output here, right? Because the EMA is still sloping up, just not as much as it was before, right? It's sloping up steeper, further back, and it's kind of flattening out, but it's still sloping up. So the slope solver would still give us a long output here, right? So this change in slope, using its default outputs here, adds a little limitation here, so that if the moving average is beginning to roll over, or looks like it's rolling over, flattening out, no signals possible. All right, so next we got all these components. Now we just tie them all together with an AND node, and there we have it. There we go. So let's see here. So let's take a look at these couple of bars here with a long signal, right? So if we look at the Bollinger, the Bollinger contracted just prior. Yeah, so it actually was contracting for 1 or 2 bars here. The Bollinger contracted right there, and then it started expanding again. All right, so the Bollinger is expanding. The EMA is definitely sloping up, and also the Chaikin did have a couple of up bars. So yeah, the Chaikin was, is moving downward, but it did have a couple of up bars there, and then it had a couple more up bars. So yeah, so there you go. Everything is in alignment there, and then we had 1 bar with no long signal, and that's because of our Chaikin indicator fell back down a little lower before it started to slope up again. All right, so there we have it. So one of them, tick minimum for Bollinger, tick minimum. Yeah, so let's take a look at the expansion contraction here. So yeah, so if you wanted to, right, with the expansion contraction solver, you can say, okay, the 2 bands need to expand by at least X number of points or ticks. Yeah, so we could put in here a requirement that the Bollinger has to expand by X number of ticks. And actually, let's hold on a moment. Yeah, so that we can see this, let's shrink this up. And all right, yeah, so let's see. Yeah, we have a pretty significant expansion here, and we're getting some expansion there, so maybe, hopefully we can see what happens here. So let's connect this to the result node. All right, so there we go. And let's go into the expansion contraction rules here. And if we put in, let's say 2 ticks, hit apply, and wow, okay, there is no expansion contraction anymore. Okay, I didn't think 2 ticks are going to remove everything. Let's see, even 1 tick. Let's try 0.2 ticks. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so looking at the chart here, so we know the bands are expanding right on all these bars here, but we can see here, right, the expansion isn't quite as extreme here on these couple of bars here. I think that does it for this question here, for this topic.